Thank you very much, Kathy. Well, workers at Mango Airlines will be approaching the courts tomorrow in a bid to save jobs and the company. However, these workers aren't alone, with some other companies hit twice, first by the COVID-19 pandemic and lockdown, and now the impact of the looting and unrest in KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng. Law firm Cliff Decker-Hofmeyr says business rescue processes could become too much to handle in the coming months. For more, we are joined by Cliff Decker-Hofmeyr, Dispute Resolution Director Belinda Scriba. Thank you very much, Belinda, for joining us. Let's talk about the state of business rescue in South Africa. We saw how important it became for businesses, big and small, in the past year. But you say the country might not have enough experts for the rise we are expecting in business rescue applications due to the recent unrest.
Yes, I think we've seen, and it's, first of all, thank you for having me, and welcome to your listeners. I think the last year has been unprecedented in that, you know, we went into a global pandemic. At the same time, Moody's downgraded South Africa. So we went through this extraordinarily difficult economic time during 2020, you know, with lockdowns on and off. And I think people started turning to business rescue because it is not as harsh as liquidation, and there is prospects of rescuing businesses and therefore prospects of saving jobs and saving businesses. So yes, so we were already in this state of increased business distress because of COVID and because of our economy already in 2020, and then this year, of course, these unprecedented and unforeseen riots, and they've destroyed, you know, not only physical property, but they've destroyed people's livelihoods. And there are some businesses that are not going to fully recover from this. And the problem is also now is you're sitting with a record number of businesses going into business rescue and not enough business rescue practitioners, or not enough experienced business rescue practitioners, in order to assist these businesses to try and at least trade their way out of distress. At the moment, we have 361 business rescue practitioners. Of those, 23% are experienced business rescue or senior business rescue practitioners, and that's 23% of that number. And we need, if not double or triple that amount, if you look at the amount of businesses that are already business rescue and are probably likely to go into business rescue because of the continued lockdowns and now these riots.
Belinda, let's talk about the implications the recent unrest is likely to have on the business rescue practice in South Africa. Usually, a business rescue is followed by negative connotations. Many people are unaware that, in fact, a business rescue is intended to save some jobs and the company itself.
Yes, so the reason that business rescue was introduced into South Africa in 2011 was in order to try and find a less harsh way for businesses that were financially distressed without putting into liquidation. Because liquidation, to be honest, it's the nail in the coffin, because what the liquidator's job is to try and get the best return for creditors, and that is their primary job. So they're going to be looking at the business and how to sell assets off and how to sell them off, not only quickly, but, you know, to the best value of creditors. So they're not necessarily looking at the whole in terms of everyone affected, from employees to shareholders. Their job is to protect the creditors. So business rescue it's a mechanism that's been created if a company is financially distressed, but there is a potential that it can trade out of that distress into solvency. There is a secondary mechanism which has caused a bit of negative connotation. I'll get into that now. But the primary mechanism is to look at companies and to see if there is a possibility of, instead of them going into liquidation because they are seemingly insolvent, if there's a way of just giving them some protection to allow them to trade out of their state of distress at that time. So business rescue, then it puts a cloak over the businesses and it creates some breathing room from its creditors, and it allows business rescue practitioners to go in and work with the board to try and see if there's a way to either encourage new investment or to just work out and restructure the business in such a way that, if not to salvage the whole business, to salvage some portion of the business and therefore jobs. There is a secondary mechanism to business rescue, which is a more negative one, in that if business rescue practitioners go in and they see that the company can't trade back into solvency, then what they need to do is to find other mechanisms and other ways to see if they can sell the business and its assets in a way that will achieve more than if the business went into liquidation. So they will start then negotiating and working again with the board and its advisors, and to try and see if there's a way of, if they do have to sell off assets, to sell the assets off to achieve more than would be achieved under liquidation. So in short, business rescue is there to help companies that are financially distressed but not completely dead in the water, to try and just give them some protection and some guidance and restructuring to bring them out of the state of insolvency.
Let's talk about one of those companies that are financially distressed right now. Mango Airlines suspended operations some time ago. Staff now say they will be approaching the court to put business rescue application. Would this be the right route to take? Clearly, they believe so, but it does not have to take the company's board, clearly, to actually make that application.
No, so there are mechanisms under Chapter 6 where either the board can place it into business rescue through a business rescue resolution. That's just a board resolution. But if the board doesn't do that, then there are other mechanisms open to affected parties, shareholders, employees, creditors, to bring an application to court, to say to a court, the company needs to go into rescue. Here are the reasons it should go into rescue. And then the court needs to weigh up those reasons and decide if business rescue is the most viable option for the company.
Belinda, before I let you go, just briefly, when does a business qualify for business rescue, and when do you see this in the next coming months? We've seen the numbers, they've been quite low in the past 12 months, but where do you see them in the coming months as more businesses come up to actually apply for business rescue?
Yeah, it's a very good question. You're going to see a lot of people that are going to be looking at the businesses, and the technical definition of financial distress is that the board can see that in the next 6 months it's not going to be able to meet all it's not going to be able to pay all its debts, or in the next 6 months it is going to be technically insolvent. So its assets, its liabilities are going to exceed its assets. So you will be seeing a lot more assessment by boards, I think, as to whether or not they're in financial distress. If it is a resolution that's to be passed, it's the board that's got to pass that resolution, and they've got to make a decision. If they can see that the business is financially distressed, they have an obligation, a fiduciary obligation to the company and to its shareholders and everybody else, all the other stakeholders. They have a duty to assess whether or not business rescue is a viable option. And they do then have to look to see whether they fall within that qualification of being distressed. And then secondly, they need to see whether or not, in their view, and it is a subjective view, taking all other considerations of the company and into the pot and thinking about it, they need to just make a decision whether there is a reasonable prospect of the company being rescued. And remembering rescues either trading back into insolvency or that the business assets can be sold for more than would be in liquidation.
Belinda, thank you very much this evening for your time. That is Belinda Scriba, the Director of Dispute Resolution at Cliff Decker Hofmeyer, telling us about the concerns that they have about what the looting and the unrest that took place in the past week. It could have implications of a huge increase in business rescue practices, as many businesses